Hey guys, so this is going to be an impromptu little video. Today I want to explain how to put a front sway bar into one of these. Now you may be thinking, this is really easy, why are you even filming this? Well, let me explain. This is not a 6-cylinder, this is the V8, M60 to be exact, or M62 non-TU actually. And it's a little bit more involving than the 6-cylinder. And there is one DIY on the internet on how to do this. That DIY is not correct. It has a lot more labor than is actually needed. So I'm not going to be showing you guys how to do it because I've already done it. I'm going to be showing you guys what the steps are, step by step, so that you can do it yourself and save yourself a ton of time and effort. And yeah, so let's get started. All right, so the first thing we want to do is we want to get under the hood. So let's pop the hood and have a look at all the stuff that we have to remove here. So here is our M62 non-TU. Now the first step is the strut brace has to come off. Second step is this engine cover. The reason for that is because when we jack the engine up, it will hit the wiper cowling. Next, we're going to be pulling off these air vents over here. When we remove these air vents, the engine will not clip them when it's jacked up. Next, we want to move on to this air intake hose over here. We don't have to pull everything out here, but we want to just disconnect this hose so it doesn't put any pressure, or so the engine being lifted doesn't put pressure on this and rip it. So what I did was I just took out this MAF sensor over here. I disconnected it from the airbox and I disconnected it from the hose. Removing this MAF sensor broke the connection. And then in turn, when I lifted the engine, this had no pressure on it. Optional is this radiator hose. Now you really don't have to remove this. It is quite flexible and it will not break. However, depending on how high you put the motor, just keep your eye on this. If you're starting to see that it's pulling too hard and then it's making creases or putting too much tension, stop. All right, so quick recap. Strut brace, engine cover, airbox vents, MAF sensor, and you should be good to go to lift the motor up from the engine bay side. Now it's time to move under the car. So the first step is support your e39. I put it on jack stands. It is supported by the subframe. Now you want to grab the front of the subframe here because you need to maneuver the sway bar. And second of all, get it up as high as you possibly can. You want to have ground clearance because when you're twisting the sway bar, you're going to need clearance to basically get it to rotate. Now you can see I already put the new sway bar in. The old one is that red one. It's slightly bent. And yeah, first step is we're going to be removing these two bolts here. 1, 2. We're going to be doing this twice. So we're going to be doing it on this side. And then we're going to be doing it here on this side. These are the engine mount pillows. Removing these bolts allows us to lift the motor. Once these pillows are undone, our next step is going to be to support the engine. So you want to get yourself a nice big block of wood, and you basically want to grab the engine here, up there, by the oil pan. And obviously you're going to put your jack underneath that block of wood, and you're going to start jacking up your engine. Now, once you have the engine unbolted, it's not going anywhere. So just, you know, get your jack, get your wood, supporting wood, set everything up, but don't actually lift the engine yet because we're not quite there yet. All right, so once you have everything supported and set up, the next step you want to take is you want to remove this front control arm. You want to do this on both sides. It goes right here. Removing this control arm basically allows us to rotate this, which is the sway bar obviously, in all the directions that we need to rotate it in order to free it from the car. So that's going to be the first step. Second step is you want to take out the steering box linkage. So you can see over here, here's one of the, this is the idler arm for the steering box linkage, and I moved it out of the way. Basically, this is as far as it goes. But the next step is you want to take out your steering linkage, which is that component right there. Really easy to do, not a lot of work. Disconnect it from the spindles, etc., 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 and pull it out. With the steering linkage in place, you will not have enough clearance to squeeze the sway bar through. It is just not physically possible. All right, so moving on to the other side of the car, as you can see, I am working on something else here, but that's why I'm kind of filming this impromptu video. I was trying to look up how to remove the sway bar for this car, and the only tutorial that exists is really terrible. It involves you unbolting the subframe and all of this crazy stuff, which you really don't need to do. Now, full disclosure, I obviously don't have the spindle here. I don't have any of the control arms on this side. Everything's been removed for a different repair, so I have a lot more clearance here. That being said, you're not going to have all this clearance. So imagine that the spindle is here, and you've disconnected that control arm over here. Now for this side, in order to have the clearance to pull the sway bar out, you are going to have to disconnect this control arm as well and pull this control arm out. When you pull this control arm out, you should be able to turn and rotate the spindle towards your left, and when you do that, it should give you enough clearance to maneuver everything here. So once you have those control arms disconnected, you've pulled out the steering linkage, you should be good to unbolt the sway bar. Really easy. It's just two brackets, one on this side, one on the other side. And then at that point, once you have all this set up, you're going to pump up your jack with the support that you put underneath your oil pan, and you're going to start to gently lift the motor. Now, in order to get the sway bar out, you're going to have to lift the motor up pretty high. So make sure your hood is open because the motor needs to go someplace, and make sure you've done all the stuff that I've described underneath the hood so that you don't damage anything. And then just gently start lifting up your motor. As you can see, I've lifted up this motor and there's no damage to the oil pan whatsoever. Or the damage that this oil pan does have, the scrapes and stuff, that has nothing to do with what I've done, because I've used this block of wood and wood just doesn't do that. Not to mention the fact that there's some surface rust. Those are probably from bottoming out on something. What? I don't know. This isn't my car. But anyways, none of that is relevant. So start lifting up your engine by the oil pan with your support block, nice and gentle, nice and slow. And when you're lowering it, you want to do the same thing. Now, the reason why you're lifting up an engine is because once you are in here and you've taken out your steering linkage and everything is prepped, there is really no space to twist the sway bar around in order to get it free. And you will have to twist it because look at the shape of this thing. So with all these bends, you will have to twist it and pull it through in some really weird combinations. Now, the only tip I have is when you're at this stage and your engine is jacked up and you have enough clearance and the sway bar is almost coming out, be wary of this little bracket right here. This is basically, I believe it's the stop for the steering. It is the limiter. Anyways, be aware of this bracket because you will have to maneuver the sway bar around this bracket, and the sway bar will most likely get stuck on this bracket. It's not a big deal. You just have to do some geometrical magic and work around this bracket, and you will be able to get it out no problem. Now, the sway bar that I pulled out is this I-back sway bar over here. It has a slight bend to it, unfortunately, from, well, the reason why I have the car apart is because that altercation caused the bend to the sway bar. So I'm putting in this OEM M5 sway bar, or I've put in this OEM M5 sway bar already. And the one thing I can tell you is this OEM sway bar is angled just a little bit better than this I-back is. And it is a lot easier to put this OEM sway bar in. It doesn't hang on anything, whereas this I-back fought me quite a bit, and it was still hanging even with the engine jacked up and all that wonderful stuff. So just be aware that if you're putting in a aftermarket sway bar, you will have to struggle a little bit more, but just be patient and you should be able to get it in. And you know, you just have to make sure that you have your motor lifted up correctly, you have the correct clearance, you know, nothing is getting crunched up top, the motor's not hitting anything, and you should be just fine. And of course, you're not ripping your radiator hose. But that being said, as you can see, this is fully doable. without having to unbolt the subframe, without having to lower the subframe, without anything like that. So just take it from me. I don't think lowering the subframe would give you enough clearance to do this job anyways. The reason why I say this is because the subframe won't allow the sway bar to slip by anyways because of the way the sway bar is installed. It's installed to the back of the subframe over here. So it's not like if you lower the subframe, you're going to be able to just slide the sway bar out. That's not how this design works at all. The sway bar is sandwiched in between the engine, the oil pans, and the subframe. So it's technically, it's not going anywhere. So in my opinion, the best course of action for swapping this guy out is just to lift up the engine like I've described in this video. Anyways, I'm rambling on now. Follow these steps and you should be just fine. Thank you for watching. I hope this helps out people who are stuck doing this like I was. And excited to hear your results in the comments and your success in swapping out your bar. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.